was Alice. I worked for the Umbrella Corporation, the largest and most powerful commercial entity in the world.
In this video, we will dive into the movie Resident Evil Retribution. We will discuss the movie story, summarize the plot, and explore the cast and characters. Additionally, we will cover the movie production details and box office performance. Finally, we will provide the reviews and personal reactions. Let's begin. Last week, I reviewed a movie called Brandon, a terrible little film about evil corporations, narrating space wars and evil blob monsters made of brands. Despite these seemingly ridiculous elements, however, the movie is somehow no fun at all. Every time I explain branded plots to people, I would have to keep repeating it's not as hilarious as it sounds. Resident Evil Retribution, on the other hand, is just as hilarious as it sounds. It's one of those magical movies that manage to do so much wrong but in the best, most entertaining ways possible. The somehow fifth installment of the undying Resident Evil franchise continues the adventures of Alice, played by Milla Jovovich, as she attempts to take down the ludicrously diabolical Umbrella Corporation. They don't seem to understand that no one can buy your product if anyone is dead. After an adeptly slick opening credit sequence, followed by a far less slick 5-minute montage of exposition to explain what happened in the last 4 films, it doesn't help anything make more sense. It's back to the back flick and machine guns as Alice must escape and the underground Umbrella lab in snowy Russia. She, as well as the rescue team sent to save her, must fight their way through multiple waves of bad guys, a few of which include former teammates gone bad, including Mitchell Rodriguez and Odette Fair. Not since the first-person shooter sequence in Doom have a movie so resemble a video game on screen. The first half of the film solely involves Alice moving from room to room, killing zombies. Level 1 is Umbrella, well lit headquarters. Level 2 is rainy Tokyo, which ends with a boss fight against not one but two beasts with massive speaking hammers. It's okay though because Ada Wong fights alongside Alice. Two-player co-op. Most of the accidental fun of Resident Evil Retribution comes in these early action scenes, which the movie has almost no discernible story or characters and is just a collection of video game levels that must be beaten. Jump attack, reload, double kill. Time for a vehicle section, get to the checkpoint or Nazi zombie mode. The movie even has a holographic map screen that occasionally pops up to show our hero's progress. All that missing a little health bar to show how much life our characters have and if they have any health kits. The mildest action could be genuinely exciting. Tornado Dizzy Robo Technon score containing helps minus one part that is a identical copy of Zimmer's Inception, but besides the change in location, every fight looks and feels the same. The only exception is the last fight scene, which feels longer and far more tedious than the others. It's hard to feel like much is at stake either. Alice seems to have an endless supply of clone lives, so dying is not really a concern, and the story established that everything is just a simulation. Maybe. The plot, fundamentally rolled out in briefly moments of dull exposition, which comprise almost all of the dialogue, makes almost no logical sense. The acting doesn't help the audience care much either. It does make for some good laughs even after 4 movies. Jovic doesn't look comfortable as Alice. I don't know how comfortable I'd be in that skin-tight mess of spandex and belt that she is wearing throughout Retribution. The script tries to give her a little girl to care about, but she is an afterthought. Plus, it's hard to believe Alice really cares when she only has 2 facial reactions, pensive confusion and angry but smells. Face she puts on during action scene. The comedic triumph of Resident Evil Retribution, it's Sienna, Guillory. The British actress is decked out in an absurd purple jumpsuit and a mind-controlling silver necklace, says every line with the same emotional passion that one has for their socks. She does not even look right in the action scene, skirting into unconvincing pauses while shooting her guns like she is personally pushing the bullets out. It's hilarious non-performance like gloriously that make me think if the Resident Evil series continues and it really doesn't have to seriously screen grims, you can stop making these movies anytime now. It should go in the direct of self-parody. Retribution shows it has the chops for comedy, at least for the unintentional variety. Resident Evil Retribution and the Rain injects herself with the lost Pelagus virus and kills Luther. Just as Alice is about to be killed by Jill, she rips the Red Queen's control device from her chest. Alice shoots the ice and the Rain, who is pulled under by zombies. Alice possesses out and awakens in the White House, which Wesker is using as the final bastion of humanity. He gives Alice back her power, which he says are necessary in order for them to make their final stand. Looking out over the rooftop of the White House, the compound is surrounded by millions of zombies, mutations, and flying beasts. The movie is released in 2012. Resident Evil Retribution is plain awful. Resident Evil Retribution presents Paul W.S. Anderson's worst tendency as a filmmaker: empty, clunky, and ugly. This is Anderson's most dull picture yet and the weakest installment in an already weak series. Retribution begins shortly after the events of the previous film Resident Evil Afterlife. Alice is shooting quarters of a shipping boat, standing still while simultaneously dodging countless amounts of bullets, and is finally knocked unconscious. When she wakes up or when her clone awakens, she has been captured and sent isolated in, of course, a very wide room in an underground Umbrella Corporation lair. Once she escaped that white room, thanks to a traitor from the inside, Alice has to fight off hordes of the same zombies and beasts we have seen her battle for too many times before. However, this time all the battles are done within a virtual com, which makes no difference whatsoever. She wanders from New York City to Moscow, and despite the changing environments, all the set piece stay the same. Then again, nothing is new here, it's more of the same. Stylistically and structurally, it's an if Edison just reshaped moments from the previous films and simply reused them, even on a basic popcorn minded level. There's no excitement in watching Alice take down a pack of mutated zombies. The slow-mo fighting style is no longer distinct. Alice is already invincible, and with the leading us to next point, there are zero stakes involved. There's no weight to these battles because the stakes are never clearly laid out, and the rules of this virtual setup are a tad hazy. If these environments are indeed virtual, then how can any real harm come about? How can the cars and buses blow up, and is it the virtual environment messing with their mind, or did some of the henchmen spend an infinite amount of years carrying down cabs, buses, and other such things down to this badly located underground lair? What about the zombies? Are they all clones like the many Alices we see in the film? If not, then how can they cause harm to Alice and friends? With all the exposition in the film, it's basically all these questions are left unanswered, or perhaps are too mental up to understand. Only a handful of lines in Anderson's scripts are not exposition. Everyone grimaces through his clunky video game like dialogue as if though it's as bad as it is. Case is point Johan Arp, playing a member of the team attempting to assist Alice, delivers nearly all his lines in a super serious manner to let the audience know just how serious this all is. I expect none of Resident Evil Retribution can be taken seriously, nor even enjoyed on a visceral or iconic level. The film starts off with a flashback, then a long expository intro chronically the past films, then some virtual experience, and after 20 minutes of that zero momentum introduction, Resident Evil Retribution continues to have its wheels of exposition, driven dialogue, inconsequential fight scene, and a badly repetitive score which thinks this is all much cooler than it really is. Resident Evil Retribution, released in 2012, directed by Paul W.S. Anderson and also written by Paul W.S. Anderson, starring Milla Jovovich, Sienna, Guillory, Mitchell Rodriguez, and music by Tomantini, cinematography by Glenn Patcherson, editing by Nevin Hovey. Resident Evil Retribution is a 2012 action horror film written and directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. It's also a direct sequel to Resident Evil Afterlife 2010, the fifth installment in the Resident Evil film series. The plot of the movie is that Alice and the others on the Umbrella Corporation freighter Arcadia are attacked by a fleet of traitor V-22 Osprey led by Alice's brainwashed former ally, Jill Valentine, resulting in the killing of many of the survivors in the ship. Alice is captured during the attack while the fates of Chris Redfield, Claire Redfield, and Kmart are left ambiguous. The story switches to a suburban Alice living with her husband Todd and her deaf daughter Becky. The zombies attack, revealing the suburbia was actually Raccoon City during the contamination incident. Alice and Becky managed to run away from the undead with the help of Rain Ocampo by letting them ride in her car. As they escape, they are hit by a garbage truck, knocking Rain unconscious. Alice hides Becky inside another house but is killed by a zombie Todd. Meanwhile, the real Alice awakens in an underground facility and is interrogated by Jill. During a power failure, Alice escapes her cell and the laser grid, finding herself in a simulation of Shibuya Square, Tokyo. Fighting her way out against zombies, she enters a control room filled with dead Umbrella employees and encounters Ada Wong, one of Albert Wesker's top agents. Wesker appears on screen explaining that both no longer serve Umbrella and the power outage was staged by Wesker's hacking into the facility computer mainframe. Wesker also revealed that the Red Queen, one of Alice's arch enemies, was recreated after the Hive incident and now controls Umbrella. He continues on that the facility is underpowered, located in Kamchatka, Russia, and that is formerly served as a Soviet naval outpost. The facility was designed by Umbrella for manufacturing clones and creating simulated outbreaks to show the effect of the T-virus. Ada and Alice plan to rendezvous with a rescue crew organized by Wesker, which include Leon S. Kennedy, Barry Barton, and Luther West, Alice's former ally who survived after the outbreak in Los Angeles. Leon's team plants explosives near the entrance of the facility, which will detonate in 2 hours to ensure the facility's destruction. The group plans to meet with Alice and Ada in the Raccoon City suburbia area. In a New York City simulation, Alice and Ada defeat two executioner Leon and his team enter a Moscow simulation Red Square in front of the Gum Facade, but they are cut off by a heavily armed Las Vegas undead horde which has surrounded them. In the suburban setting, Alice and Ada encounter Becky, who mistakes Alice for her clone mother and is instantly attached to her. They also encounter Jill and the clones of Alice's deceased allies, James Van Shade, Rain Ocampo, and Carlos Oliveira, who are sent to capture them. During a short out triggered by Ada, she gives Alice her smart glasses and her grappling hook so that she and Becky can find their way out. Before they become separated, the two encounter the good clone of Rain, whom they met in suburbia at the beginning. In the Moscow simulation, and Alice gave her a weapon in order to help keep Beck safe. She then rescues Leon's surviving crew from the barrage of Los Angeles zombies and a giant liquor. Once united, the group head toward the tunnel and reaches the submarine pens in the facility exit, but are soon ambushed by Jill's team. Becky is captured by the Lysers and Goodrain is killed, breaking her neck against concrete after being thrown by the Lyser. Alice rescues Becky and kills the Lyser using a belt of grenades. Barry sacrifices himself in the process, holding the umbrella operatives off long enough to ensure the others escape. Using Leon's bombs, they finally manage to destroy the facility, allowing Leon and Luther to escape, while Alice and Becky also survive, having used the ventilation system. On the surface, all is quiet until their showmobile is knocked over by Jill Valentine's Oscar-class submarine. Jill and Evelyn confront the group with Ada being held as their hostage. Jill and Alice begin fighting each other while Rain, now also enhanced with the Las Vegas parasite, granting her superhuman strength and healing, fight Leon and Luther. Alice is able to tear the mind-controlling sacraps of Jill's chest, returning her to normal. Unfortunately, Rain kills Luther while Leon is knocked out. Realizing that Rain is too powerful to fight, Alice shoots the ice under her feet and she is tracked down by swimming zombies from the Andresia installation to be devoured, killing her for good. Alice, Jill, and the remaining survivors travel to Vesker's headquarters, a heavily barricaded and fortified White House staffed by the remainders of the US Armed Forces. Alice meets Vesker in a heavily barricaded Oval Office where he injects her with another strange of the T virus, returning her superhuman abilities as only Alice successfully bonded with it. She is the ultimate weapon. On the roof, Vesker explained that the Red Queen is trying to wipe out humanity and all of the remaining uninfected humans are in the base. It is humanity's last stand. Polway shows that US military defending the White House alongside the remaining Umbrella Corps soldier against armies hordes of T-virus ammunition swarming all over the walls. Cast: Milla Jovovich as Alice, Metal Rodriguez as Rain Ocampo, Kevin Donald as Barry Burton, Sienna Guillory as Jill Valentine, Odette Fair as Carlos Oliveira, Lee Bringing as Ada Wong, Sean Roberts as Albert Whisker, John Orb as Leon Kennedy, Boris Kajo as Luther West. Resident Evil Retribution 2012 movie is the fifth installment of the Resident Evil film series. It marks the third film of the franchise directed by Paul W. S. Anderson and the second one filmed in 3D. After the events of Afterlife, Alice, Milla Jovovich awakens in the heart of the Umbrella Corporation's underwater operation facility in Russia. Once she escapes her cell, Alice runs into Ada Wong, played by Lee Bingbing, who has infiltrated the facility with the help of the Albert Wesker, played by Sean Roberts, who survived the attempts on his life at Arcadia. The newfound allies discover that Umbrella has used Alice's DNA to both perfect and stop the virus. When they venture further into the facility, they discover that Umbrella has been using clones of both Alice and several of dead friends as test subjects for the company's demonstration of its biological weapons. With a rescue party on the way, an Umbrella soldier led by a mind-controlled Jill Valentine closing in, Alice must find a way to escape the facility so she can take down Umbrella once and for all. The film also starred Michelle Rodriguez as Rain Ocampo, Kevin Durant as Barry Burton, Ariana Engineer as Becky, Colin Solomon as James Vanshade, John Orb as Leon S. Kennedy, and Boris Kajaro as Luther West. Action Survivor. The Alice clone we see shows sign of this as she thinks quick enough to survive the zombies and protect her daughter, Becky, despite a complete lack of training. With badass practically written in her DNA, there is a genuine chance she could have survived long enough to meet the real Alice. But with no skills to fall back on, she dies when she turns her zombified husband. She did manage to keep Becky alive, though. Actually, a doom bot. In the novelization, Alice learns that the Wesker who got blows up in Afterlife was actually a clone. This somehow ignores the parachute that could be seen after the V2OL has exploded. Adaptation's expansion. The film's novelization rescues a few things from earlier version of the script, flashback to the past lives of Alice and her clones, how Luther ended up in Leon's resistance, a fight against an infected trainee clone instead of the X-Men, and a slightly different plot where the Red Queen is absent and Jill and the clones follow an unknown party instead. Expands other like their battle against the mutated train, the clones' mindset and orders, and the resistance travel in helicopter back to Washington DC, in which they have to battle more zombies, and adds a new, completely original subplot about a guard clone named Dory and her allies trying to reach an island populated by pandemic survivors. Adaptational heroism. Leon's crew include Sergei Vladimir, who is the original game's boss in Cohorts with Umbrella and was a major villain in the Umbrella Chronicles. Here he is a good guy just like Knockley from Apocalypse. Alternative foreign theme song. The theme song of the Japanese release title Ashita Sky is performed by Mika Nakshimika, who plays the famous J-pop card Zombies in the series. Back to back, Bedas, Alice and go against the two executioners, then fight against an Umbrella Mook Stripe team soon after. This was worn by both the regular Umbrella Mooks, also gas masks, long coat, and the last Pegasus undead. Bedos normal. Throughout the majority of the film, none of the primary protagonists have anything other than heavy firepower, good aim, the hand-to-hand combat skill going for them. Despite this, they wipe up hordes of zombies and Umbrella Mooks, a giant licker, and a couple of executioner. Batter up. The Alice clone kills a zombie with an aluminium baseball bat. This plays Leon's and Ada dating Catwoman dynamic from the games. At one point, Leon puts his hand on Ada's legs, Ada simply sighs and removes it. Big Bad, the Red Queen, returns as the primary antagonist of the film. A brainwashed and crazy Jill serves as the heavy operating under her orders. Bottomless magazine. This is averted when Alice has to reload a pistol but played straight when she gains submachine guns and never reloads. This is also overrated with Barry toward the end of the film. This submachine gun runs out of ammo, which forces him to restore to his pistol. Resident Evil Retribution. Alice still fighting to save the world. The fifth entry in a series as indestructible as Alice, Milla Jovovich, its assassinated heroine. Resident Evil Retribution finds her still on the mysterious ship where Resident Evil Afterlife left her. Almost decade has passed since the endlessly mutating T-virus began transforming most of humanity and zoology into drooling, pimpy cannibal, but Alice, part human, part viral art airpushed, is still fighting to save the world. She must be as tired as we are. Not wearying at all of Mrs. Jovich's entirely moving parts, the director Paul W.S. Edison, who wrote all 5 installments, has directed 3 all-time strips, is leading lady of her superpower and by way of consolation reunites her with previously terminated characters. Whether she have been sushi by a laser or blew up by a atom blonde, Mr. Edison will find a way to resurrect you, usually with even favor facial expression than before. A Night at the Opera. Angelina Jolie plays the superhero Sopra Maria Calls in the new movie Maria. Resident Evil Retribution review. Plot summary. In the fifth entry, Alice finds herself in yet another wonderland as she must escape an Umbrella Corps facility. To be honest, I have no idea what is going on anymore in these movies. Wait, let me rephrase. I don't think the makers have any idea what is going on anymore. It's as if every movie they just throw into hate characters and scenes from the video game series, and whatever they pull off they find a way to work into the films. So all those characters we saw at the end of Part 4 they just leave out unexplained with the exception of one guy to kill off. This is not new as they have been basically doing this is the whole franchise. In exchange, we get a few more famous game characters to even out the ranks while mindlessly bringing back characters probably to make the trailer look cool rather than make any sense. Speaking of which, they could not even get our beloved character right. Leon from the RE2 and RE4 games says something about ditching some little girl who thinks she is Alice's daughter. Wow, how ridiculous considering he is the one character that spent an entire game trying to rescue a girl. How are there still this many umbrella facility in the world? How is there this much human feeder considering I thought humanity was all but dead by part 3 so the facility can make clones? Great, but why would it conveniently only make clones of people in Alice's life? And no, they were not cloned deliberately to screw with Alice because that plot point never even came up. We have random plot elements like the last Belga occurs with no explanation useless. We have played the games. Even then, they just do whatever they want with the source material so now Las Belgas makes you like invincible. Probably the dumbest part to this whole movie is towards the end and Wesker, who magically survived part of 4, gives Alice back her powers. This is so dumb I cannot even explain it. You write yourself into a corner with a character so powerful she cannot reasonably be stopped. They write out her powers to ground the story back into reality only to give her those powers right back. Paul W.S. Anderson's Joe Hacker. I swear this film and franchise for the matter is so loaded with multiverse stupidity and bad writing and it makes me want to kill someone. But despite all this frustration, I will admit the movie was entertaining and had a lot of cool action. My favorite thing was just seeing Lee Bingbing play Ada Wong, probably the only reason I even rated this so high. Not only does she look so unbelievably sexy, she is the character. I could not possibly imagine anyone else as the character now because she just works on every level. I'm not sure about the voice though because her English was too good considering I know Mrs. Lee has an accent. Some are speculating she was dubbed, but her voice does sound like her usual but cleaned up somehow. Maybe she just really beefed her up English skills over the last couple years. In the end, if you like the franchise, then you will probably like this much better than the last entry. It is a solid action film if you are okay with virtually no story and definitely no story progression to the overall methods. I prefer the game, so to each their own. I had planned on reviewing the rest of the films to lead into this, but this plot is so annoying I cannot bring myself to touch on the others for a while. Resident Evil Retribution. Here's the problem with the Resident Evil movies, they feel more like video games than the video games they are based on. Capcom's Resident Evil is dark, sinister, disturbing, and cinematic. Paul W.S. Harrison's Resident Evil Retribution is loud, violent, hectic, and dumb. It's like taking the world's greatest Figo beef steak and grinding it to make a greasy hamburger. The fifth installment in Resident Evil series 3 after the Earth Apocalypse and 2 since Mankind Extinction for those keeping score at home allows the indestructible killing machine Alice as she once again wagers war on the evil Umbrella Corporation, which has destroyed the planet by turning everyone in the cast that is not morally famous actor into a zombie. The opening credits are the most interesting scene: an assault on a boat by Umbrella forces carried out entirely in slow motion reverse. Alice begins floating to the ocean floor, then races to the surface. The falls upwards onto the deck where she evades a helicopter moments before she shouts it out of the sky with a shotgun. It's a beautiful, bizarre, and dreamlike. And then things get really regressive. Alice appears on a video screen to explain the events of the four previous films. She speaks directly to the audience. She talks for what feels like 5 minutes straight. This happened, and then this happened, and this happened. Exposition doesn't get more expository than this. Finally, the history lesson is over, and opening credit sequence plays again. This time is the proper chronology. When it's over, Alice suddenly makes as it for a dream. It is a peaceful suburban house with her husband and daughter. But just as Edison pulls one rough out of under this, he starts lining up a whole warehouse of carpet to yank. The zombie storms Alice's home, kill her husband, and chase her into the street where a full-scale flesh-eater invasion appears to the underway. Then she wakes up again in some kind of umbrella laboratory. So what the hell is going on? Honestly, it doesn't really matter. Retribution appears to have been created by Edison using the Walt Tobacco formula of screenwriting. The narrative was almost entirely built from the set piece out, Edison imagining what would be cool and then sticking up the feminineness of clothesline to hang all those set pieces on. Oh man, what if I were Nazi stormtrooper zombies and they were invading the Carliman Wonderwood Cool, and what if there were like two crazy giant dudes with bloody axes and white bags over the heads and like nails sticking out of the backs, and they were repainting through Times Square, only Times Square was like totally empty Woodop Badu. What kind of she cannot help but wonder through just what the hell Umbrella is doing with these weird Nazi stormtrooper zombies and oversized big-headed butchers. Apparently, according to yet another video screen lecture, Umbrella built phony but incredibly realistic dome stay scenario to set WMDs. They created a fake zombie outbreak in a recreation of Tokyo and then sold virus that specs into the Chinese and vice versa. Fine, that makes some kind of sense, but if Umbrella is motivated by greed and they are in the business of making deadly virus, how do they wind up with the crazy giant dudes with bloody axes and white bags over their heads and like nails sticking out of the bags? Are those guy in high demand, and what do they eat? Do she have to feed them regularly, or do they just feast on the flesh of their victims? Obviously, no one involved with Retribution consider any of that for even a second, and we in the audience are not supposed to either. Edison has his reputation amongst his small but vocal group of critical sports enthusiasts is a craftsman of action, plain and simple. And while Resident Evil the 5th does lean heavily on bland generic gun violence, Edison does flesh his tactical muscle in a few impressively dynamic sequences, like the aforementioned opening credit and one lean, perfect shot and cut fight scene in which Alice takes on an entire hallway of zombies with nothing but a bike chain and handgun. Every bit of spinning, swinging, kicking, shooting, and reloading a weapon as only a badass action hero can is perfectly clear and easy to follow. The plot, of course, is not, although one could argue Harrison is deliberately playing with layers of reality and false first to desurate the audience even as he dazzles with them action horror spectacle. That one, however, will not do me. Edison's action chops are unbelievable, but Resident Evil Retribution might be one of the best things ever crafted by human hands. Character switches cited for no apparent reasons, people are introduced as if they matter and don't, and anytime information needs to be conveyed to the audience, someone On screen, just say it, often looking right into the camera just to make sure we are all paying attention. On some level, I admire the parts it makes a movie that brazenly incoherent to stand up and say, yes, I will show characters running away from a giant wall of water and then a few minutes later show them appearing out of nowhere in a submarine that they would have had no way and no time to board, much less pallet to safety. But if Edison is such a talented visual stylist, why doesn't he focus on that and let someone else write him a screenplay that's a halfway interesting? Why do we have to be satisfied with the movies this brainless? I like a hamburger as much as the next guy, but at some point I want the Vigo steak. Resident Evil Retribution is in the theater, and Matt Singer is a Webby Award winning writer and podcaster. He currently runs the Critic Wire blog on IndieWire and co host in the Film Spotting Streaming Video Unit podcast. His criticisms has appeared in the pages of The Village Voice and Time Out New York and on Abbott Presents at the Movies. He lives in Brookline with his wife, dog, and a prop shot from the movies Gamkata. Resident Evil Retribution is the fifth installment in the Resident Evil franchise. The movie is released on 2012. Resident Evil Retribution movie reviews. The movie, as Earth becomes as ever made hardest, Alice, played by Milla Jovovich, continues her fight against the Umbrella Corporation evil scheme. This time the battle goes virtual inside a key Umbrella research facility as old faces from the past far. Third promise as armful Lord fan favorite returning action on a global scale, free kittens for everyone, alright perhaps not the last one. This latest outing somehow feels like it delivers even less than the last film. Indeed, the plot beats such as they are increasingly seems to be factory told, and if the aim has to make the movie appear more like a video game that someone else is playing and enjoying, mission accomplished. Once more we are treated to a version of Milla Jovovich's Alice who does not quite know what's going on his time. The scarcity of the massive lab environment that allow rampant insane computer, the Red Queen, here played by a combo of Megan Carpentier in person and Avi Merson O'Brien Weiss, to direct up versions of Audit Fair, Metal Rodriguez, and even Colin Salmon, despite them dying in earlier installments. And while the computer generated environment provides Edison's with the chance to play things even more over the top than usual, it feels like a huge swinger to claim that the action this time goes global because it's all taking place inside a glorified PS3. Still, Jovic and co covered with their all as usual with Edison's wife Moose permitted some more emotional moments via a convenient moment. Becky, deep girl Alice is fooled into thinking is her daughter early on. But the overarching plot continued on from Afterlife with Sienna, Guillory, brainwashed Jill Valentine sent in to capture or terminate our heroine is merely used to justify a load of seen it before scraps between the characters as they trade lifeless dialogue. Other including Boris Kochi and the team sent is to help Alice out or hand it even less to do, merely acting as faded for wave after wave of simulated zombies. They include returning creatures such as the Axeman, who has now brought his twin brother because, well, it's a sequel and you always have to have more, and the Likers, which are now huge because it's almost seems careless to wish for more, a franchise that appears increasingly locked into a standard pattern. But more than ever, it feels like time to give it a rest and just try something else, just not more Three Musketeers, please. Milla Jovovich. Resident Evil Retribution is the fifth installment in the Resident Evil series. the review of the movie. That's Resident Evil Retribution sums up is one beautifully British word. It's a gritty, it's a showy, it tries even so hard in some departments, but ultimately it's all a bit naff. Let's start at the beginning, just as the film does. It is a not unimpressive opening sequence. We see a fight upload a container ship unfold in reverse. Cut to Milla Jovovich's allies starting into the camera talking us on a gimmicky and not all that clear virtual tour of the earlier films in the series. That this visually styles display sheds more light on the quality of writing contained thereon than on the preceding story speaks prophetic volumes. Once the narrative really kicks in, though, we are treated to a more mixed affairs. Sure, the dialogue throughout remains atrocious, and the premise that Alice and her rescue team must fight through an underwater base full of virtual reality test chambers is utterly preposterous, but there is a nub of an idea lurking somewhere underneath the confusion. Within these test slumbers lurks and chances of clones with fake and temperamental memories. These clones fulfill certain rules throughout the facility, and which one such little girl mistakes Alice for her mother, something approaching a mother-daughter drama break out in the 2-second increments available before something tries to eat Alice's face again. If they're a star of the show here, it's the VFX work on what sounds like a more than ample budget of million, what they have actually managed to carve out in reality pretty striking. Sure, there's the occasional bad up in quality, but Edison is asking them to do a lot. A hell of a lot, and thankfully a lot they do, from monsters to gun to cities to computer graphics and all in between. It seems they carry the weight of the film in their hands. Resident Evil Retribution even manages to give one the sneaking suspicion that the script may have been added in post-production. That what they are doing is often incoherent from a narrative or even a common sense standpoint, though is neither here nor there to Edison. It's all Baradosh, and Edison is not beyond throwing it a bit of extra people to confirm that. And you had to know what, for the most part, it's a good, clean, fun, good enough, but this I'm afraid has to complete with a whole lot of bad enough, the short of not that will keep even the biggest connoisseur of crap sitting in their seats. The exposition is enough, the acting is enough, Jill Valentine is super enough. That's before I have even got started of Sean Roberts as Albert Whisker, seemingly a CGI creation all to himself. He is not as much wooden as positively pixelated. As far as I know, he is not computer generated or enhanced in the slightest, but good God, he was strange again. It's basically a case of another Resident Evil film which is the same problems. Again, it's the word again, the Red Queen is the least scary portable device, since Domain is the only phones and horses, and although this is by no means a horror film, at no point was I scared for everyone. Is there no room for characters' empathy? Then why all the clunky exposition when we could be treated to a bit of the demographic universal human interest? Short of such a tall order, Edison seeks to hide the indagacy of his offering behind some slick action, although we all know that action is all he was after to begin with. In this he somewhat succeeds. The fight choreography is good, albeit sometimes toothless, and the production design is occasionally interesting, if frequently inexplicable. With such competency, when if comes to action, why cannot Edison just leave the writing to someone else? The series is just cycle after cycle of the same mistake and missed opportunity. Not that the studio care, because Resident Evil films have done and still do make a killing at the box office. So the lucrative franchise seemingly never ends. What's more, the ending on how here shows the series has no sign of reality. You can put as much glues on top of the shaky foundations and wooden acting as possible, Paul, but as will become apparent, you cannot varnish a turned not that will stop him trying in future. Milla Jovovich review of the Resident Evil Retribution 3D. A little more than 2 years ago, about a month before Flexes went live for the first time, I wrote a review for Resident Evil Afterlife. You can watch it. For those of you who don't want to watch, will summarize. Afterlife was garbage. Naturally, I was ever so excited to review its sequel, Resident Evil Retribution, when a movie is as dumb and derivative and it's just plain head scratchingly bad as Afterlife was. I cannot help but get pumped for what will come next. Now, before you draw assumptions, I gave Retribution a fair shake. I did not enter the IMAX theater set to hate it. I had every hope in the world that it would redeem the last installment of the franchise that happens to share a few basic concepts with one of my favorite video game franchise. How did that work out for me? Resident Evil Retribution 3D, directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, and release date was September 14, 2012. Retribution picks up directly where Afterlife left off, then drops us right into a new situation after Alice Milla Jovovich, for those living under a rock, is knocked into the water. She wakes up in a new life as a suburban housewife married to a Carlos who met his end during extinction, and mother to a cute little deaf girl. Suddenly there's a zombie everywhere, and you wonder if Paul W.S. Anderson used his CG powers to Sarah Paxton in the remake of Dawn of the Dead with his wife. Then she wakes up in an umbrella facility, and a bunch of characters from the games show up to spring her at the behest of Wesker. The Red Queen umbrella security system from the first time has taken over and will throw all manners of biohazards at the gang to stop them from escaping. Will a bunch of underdeveloped friction characters and the one returning character from the last film be enough to help Alice reach the surface with her life and limbs intact? The biggest problem with the film is that there is no character development whatsoever. The only character that gets any sort of development is Alice's daughter, played by Ariana Engineer, and she was easily the best part of the movie. Two new characters shows up with the Leon and Barry, but we do not even learn the Spanish dude's name aside from a split second listening on the monitor before he is unceremoniously murdered by Russian zombies. The other guy does not last much longer. Speaking of Leon and Barry and Ada, for that matter, if we did not play the video game, and I am guessing that there's a fair amount of the audience who did it, we are given no reason to care whether they live or die. If we did play the games, we all likely take issue with their lack of character development. It is just kind of like, oh, there are some people from the game I played short of, and I think even more than Barry, the biggest vested potential in the film was good. Rain. I was genuinely intrigued by the tall performance in the film, but Rodriguez's vegan anti-gun pillar of the community had her light snuffed out before anything could really be done with her. Oh, and Jill's back and has that device on her chest that still only those who played the games would recognize, but she makes a pretty good main bad guy, and by that I mean she fills out the latex body suit very nicely. So the character development sucks. That's pretty clear. You know what doesn't suck? The action. It was dumb as hell, as the most of it made no sense, especially if you have not played the games. Why are the X-Men so hard to kill? Why are the Russian zombies smart enough to choose guns? Why is that Liker is goosh, dark big? I started to get really frustrated with these things until I realized that Paul W. Anderson has embraced data. He is making anti-art. It's babbling for sure and hard to take seriously. But once I stopped asking why and started asking why not, the movie became much more enjoyable. The underground testing facility setup gives them the opportunity to show us fight in Times Square, Tokyo, Moscow, and the suburbs, there's lots of variety, and you know what? It was well enough. The last three films are mostly large, sprawling outdoor affairs, and even though they are in the simulated outdoor in this one, it still has that suffocating feeling because you know they are trapped underwater and there's a bomb get to off in the less than an hour. The last fight is actually really awesome once you stop caring about logic and sense and things like why didn't they just rip off that stupid metal spider an hour and a half hour ago. One thing I can say that with absolute certainty is that the film is better than the last one. It was by no means good, but it made me want to club BBCs for less than Afterlife did. If you shut your brain off and enjoy chainsaw wielding Russian zombies, it's pretty okay. The ending will really knock your socks off too, I can say with far less irony than I could 2 years ago, and I cannot wait for the next one. Oh, and I, before I forget, all the 3D did was make my roll my eyes, and the IMX sound makes the shrill torture nausea they use on Alice really unpleasant for all involved. Still, it was pretty cool seeing the double X-Men fight on an IMAX screen. Resident Evil Retribution 3D, Milla Jovovich zombie Stellar, Alice is back along with several familiar faces in Resident Evil Retribution 3D. The fifth installment is the most successful video game movie franchise ever. The sequel, once again directed by Jovich's husband Paul W.S. Harrison, picks up at the end of the previous film, Resident Evil Afterlife. Alice is a captive inside a massive Sobranian Umbrella Corporation compound. Umbrella mind controlled Alice's friend Jill Valentine, turning his former ally into her archenemy here. Umbrella itself is now fully controlled by the Red Queen program, which is determined to bring Alice back into the fold and destroy what's left of humanity. The story follows Alice's attempt to escape from the Umbrella compound with assistance from fresh faces Ada Wong, Leon as Kenny, and Barry Barton, Siger, chomping, underlies Kevin, who are also joined by Afterlife's Luther West. Their escape from sees the team move through different levels used for training purposes that recreate New York, Tokyo, and Moscow. Along the way, Alice encounters a deaf orphan named Becky and also learns more about her own past before the T-virus outbreak. She also sees the outrun of colleagues she had thought long dead, Reno Campo, Carlos Oliveira, and James Banshade, all of whom are sent after her by Umbrella. While it's pretty such business as usual in the latest Resident Evil film, Retribution at least feels more like a video game than the last few sequels have. There are different levels the characters have to fight their way through, with different boss battles along the way. Fans who have long wanted to see characters such as Ada Wong or Leon as Kennedy finally appear in the film series will be momentarily happy to see them. Momentarily, because Barry and Leon don't have much to do except shoot at things. Even Ada is a cipher, but have not we come to expect thin characterization from the franchise by now. Alice is the only character given anything close to resembling an emotional journey. Jovovich plays the character far more human and vulnerable than we are used to seeing. Being stripped of her powers and meeting a Shankar awakens not only Alice's emotional side but her maternal one as well. Alice's origin allows Jovovich to play a version of Alice who is ordinary, fearful, and uncommotion to violent. Everyone else is just along for the ride, although the Red Queen makes for a much better baddie this time than Wesker, whose agenda her contradicts much of what he did in the past. After the first character only Rain really as much as to do, Carlos best of is an Alice met in the organ sequence, while one just carnates and shorts. Rodriguez seems to be having fun playing against type as one version of Rain who hates guns, drives a hybrid, and is a girly girl in high heels. Newcomer Ariana Engineer, who like her character is partly deaf, escort herself fine in a small but important role as the orphan Alice looks after, but alas there are no replay and nude. We don't actually need to see the first four films in order to watch and understand Resident Evil Retribution. There's a lengthy recap of the events of the past films in the prologue that allows newbies to just dive in. The opening is a bit tiresome in its replay of the ending of the previous film, but all you really need to know to follow the story is summed up in the prologue. Resident Evil Retribution, of course, has its fair share of action, from some rather pedestrian shot out to some brutal hand-to-hand combat between Alice and Jill Valentine, including some blows that really should have left one of them crippled, or at the very least with broken bones. The highlight set piece in a car chase in Moscow's Red Square, Russian military zombie hook pretty cool, no motorcycles and tanks, while there are still some silly crap coming at you shout. Overall, the 3D in this film is used more of environmental effect than it was in Afterlife. Even with all of the dopey dialogue, wooden character and being there done that elements, Resident Evil Retribution is pretty decent as far as entries in this series go. It continually feels more like a video game and has a bit more emotion to it than some of the past Resident Evil sequels. But if you don't like this series, then there's not much here to make you certainly warm up to it. And if you do like the Resident Evil films, then you will likely leave the cinema content with how you have spent your time. It may be more of the same, but at least there's a bit more sizzle to the stick. This is Resident Evil Retribution in 3D. Resident Evil Retribution is style over substance in every possible definition of the concept. Since the debut of Resident Evil in 2002, the four-part film series, largely based on Capcom's survival horror video game, has scored almost 650 million in global box office ticket sale. Certain fans of the Resident Evil games still criticize the big screen adaptation for being overblown and hollow action flick that bypass canon storyline in favor of convoluted Alice-centric film plots. However, audiences still turn out in droves for director Paul W.S. Harrison's over-the-top take on the franchise. In fact, each subsequent Resident Evil film has delivered a higher box office gross than the one before, with Addison's return to the franchise director chair in Part 4, Resident Evil Afterlife, nearly doubling the global haul of Part 3, Resident Evil Extension. Addison is now set to deliver Resident Evil Retribution, another in-your-face 3D action experience that this time brings back a number of familiar faces from prior installments as well as new fan-favorite characters from the game series. As a result, does Retribution finally deliver a Resident Evil film that both fans of the games and movies will both enjoy? Unfortunately, despite the film's closer adherence to the franchise canon, Resident Evil Retribution is not likely to win over any converts that had previously passed on a prior entries in the series, as in general it's just another round of the convoluted storytelling and eye-popping action combo that Addison has relied on since the first installment in the series. Similarly, the 3D will not only be pleasing to moviegoers who judge a 3D experience based on the numbers of subjects that fly out of the screen. Subtitling has never been the director's strong suit, and once again nearly every story beat, character moments and action set piece leaves title to the imagination of mind. That said, there are enough with creature, zombie hot and brutal kill to state some action fans, especially moviegoers who have enjoyed earlier Resident Evil films. The Resident Evil Retribution story picks up where the last film left off. Alice and her allies are stranded on the Arcadia Stinger with an umbrella strike before ready to attack. After an explosive shootout, Alice is taken hostage by the Umbrella Corporation and moved to a secret facility where she is interrogated by her former friend Jill Valentine, who is under the control of any humanity supercomputer, the Red Queen. In order to rescue Alice, who holds the key to a powerful weapon, Ada Wong, Leon S. Kennedy, Barry Burton, and returning partner in Zombies Killing Luther West lead a strike on the Umbrella facility, fighting through a number of behazards, creatures, and peoples that have been mutated by T-virus and Las Plagas infections. However, as the team moves from one branch of the facility to the next, new horrors and even some long-awaited answers are unearthed. While the movie has implemented characters that are familiar to gaming fact, any new addition are merely cosmetic, as Edison's makes no efforts to adhere to character backstories from the larger franchise canon. The past in some game characters were really unknowns to long-time fans, and in some cases actually work against the director's intended efforts, as certain gamers will no doubt find their inclusion distracting instead of satisfying. Despite semi-admirable efforts, the series is so far removed from the game mythology that it would be better if Edison simply stuck to the version instead of trying for a hollow compromise. Prior installments didn't feature particularly sharp stories, but the narrative this round is so convoluted that there are two separated expository scenes where a character essentially explains the plot of the previous films and be the overarching plot of the current films viewers are in the process of watching, while the earlier Resident Evil chapters were brandished but forgivable action experience. Retribution buck up entirely under the weight of all the plot threads that Edison and the other Resident Evil directors have introduced over the course of a decade. And 5 feature installments. At one point, the movie works as comedy popcorn flick with enjoyable dump scares and flick action beats, but Edison's attempt to weave together a compelling, overarching drama out of the franchise copious dangling thread makes all the long-standing problem difficult to ignore. On top of downright settled performance from most of the case, always as laughable vocal dubbing, Retribution is chock full of ridiculous plot holes, ham-fisted melodrama, and loads of narrative backtracking. Of course, many moviegoers are going to see Retribution for the purpose of watching Jovovich snap neck and short carriages while dressing in skin-tight leather and platform boots. For viewers who can forgive all of the film's shortcomings and really only care about the hyper-styled action boots, there are definitely a few reading moments. None of these scenes are especially memorable, and several are anticlimactic, resolved entirely too quickly. But as Alice and co-pillow through one biohazards after another, Retribution does manage to deliver occasionally intriguing combat. That said, for most moviegoers, the explosions are not likely worth stumbling through the overly complicated as well as overwhelming Retribution plot pans. As indicated earlier, the 3D in Retribution is unapologetic in its gimmickry, reserves almost entirely for bullets, axes, knives, rockets, blood, and other projectiles to fly out of the screen. It's hard to recommend that anyone who enjoys more subtle and arguably inventive uses of the format pay the 3D upcharge. However, so many of the action sequences are centered around the 3D ploys that it could be even more distracting to see the film in 2D and did not experience the overly obvious third dimension pandering. Resident Evil Retribution is style over substance in every possible definition of the concept. The plot only serves as an excuse to move the character quite literally from the action sequence to the next, and the 3D is uncomfortable, off-putting, and worst of all, will likely draw moviegoers out of the on-screen action. A number of later developments clearly show that Edison's avoided emotional character moment in favor of surgical badassery at every single turn. However, in a time when amateur filmmakers can throw together cool action videos with blockbuster CGI special efforts in their home office, context and competent storytelling are more important than ever. If Harrison doesn't care enough about his character and story to make them anything but emotionalist fighting and shooting machine, why should audience care to sign up for further entries in the Resident Evil version? If you're still on the fence about Resident Evil Retribution, so you can also check out the trailer of the movies. Resident Evil Retribution movie box office. Creep to the top of the US box office, the green shoots of recovery emerged over a modest section led by a familiar friend. If Summer is the volatile scene stealer, then Atman is the steady older sibling, and while the weak box office was not classic by any scratch of the imagination, it gave studio distribution chief breathing space and put more distance between them and last weekend every nation. You know it's number when you see Milla Jovovich creeping around the sleek interior of the Umbrella Corporation and the mimics as Sony and its screen games gender unit will be happy with the $21.1 billion estimated opening weekend for Resident Evil Retribution. None of the four previous releases from the zombie horror series has cracked 100 million. They tend to finish in the 50 to 60 million range. But the franchise makes money. The last movie, Afterlife, scored a whopping $236 million internationally, which will be target for the studio after this weekend's first wave outside North America brought in roughly $50 million. Disney's latest idea is to reconfigure Pixar hit Finding Nemo as a 3D movie and it intact sufficiently large number of filmgoers to reward the released with the number 2 status on 17.5 million. CBS Films award slipped down to number 7 in its second weekend and stands at 9.2 million. This is weak even when you consider that the distributor did not invest production money and was able to limit its marketing spend by advertising on its sister broadcaster CBS. Paranorman has climbed quietly to the brink of 50 million after 5 weekends, although it will not reach the 75.3 million scored by its Laika Entertainment stalemate Crockline several years ago. The real star Thaw is the master barely a fortnight after its Vanguard premiere and the North American launch in Toronto. It's arrived in 5 US theaters and what a result, the movie opened on 73,000 theater. There were lines around the block in New York and Los Angeles, and that's how distributor Harvey Weinstein likes to do things. Start small, create demand to fuel the buzz, then expand the theater count. The latest work from Paul Thomas Edison has generally impresses critics and buyers I spoke to in Toronto. Even for some of them admitted to feeling a little baffled and wary of the lack of traditional story structure. The Master will also be a big award section contended for the Weinstein Company, and kudos must go to the Master's financier. Megan Allison, the brainchild daughter of orchestral pioneer Larry Ellison, champions the movie from an early stage and has had a hand in several leading US independent productions recently, including Lawless. During Cairns, Lawless director John Hellicoat told me that without people like Allison, US auteurs would not have the safety net to take chances. These movies need to make money, otherwise Allison will get bored and leave the space. Lewis also spent through the Weinstein and is doing fairly well on 30 million. The Master needs to deliver to its great start. North American top 10 by 16 September 2012. Resident Evil Retribution 21.1 million. Finding Nemo 3D 17 million. The Possession 5.8 million. Lawless 4.2 million, The Wars 2.9 million, The Odd Life of Thumpty Green 2.5 million, the total of 46.3 million, The Campaign 2.4 million, and total of 82.9 million dollars. Weekend box office. Resident Evil Retribution tops Finding Nemo 3D with $21.1 million. There were no blockbuster on this number frame, but after last weekend's dismal returns, it's hard to feel disappointed. Added by 3D technology, Resident Evil Retribution ran with $21.1 million, more than twice that the possession earned in first film last weekend. Finding Nemo 3D also had a ticket price advantage, although in this case the 2003 Pixar classic could not match the gross of last year's 3D The Lion King re-release. Resident Evil Retribution, the weekend 21.1 million, Finding Nemo 17 million, and the Expendables 2 80 million, The Odd of Timothy Green 46 million, The Campaign 82 million. Overall, the domestic box office remained down 18% from 2011 levels, but because we have gotten used to Dawn weekend over the past month, the return of the $20 million plus debut with Resident Evil Retribution has reason enough to celebrate. The decade-old Resident Evil franchise has been a mid-September staple since 2004 Resident Evil Apocalypse. Resident Evil debuted in March 2002 and has remained a consistent performer for Screen Gems ever since. In terms of domestic opening and worldwide grosses, the RE series got a little more grosses. The RE series got a little more lucrative with each new entry, the dream for any studio harboring franchise fantasies. Even so, by 2009 it seems that Resident Evil had run its course. 2007 Resident Evil extension earned a domestic total of $50.6 million, short of the $51.2 million of Apocalypse, and the international earning remained the lifeblood of the series. It was difficult to see how a fourth feature could be justified as it happened. The 3D revelation gave producers all the justification they needed, along with bringing back original director Paul W.S. Harrison's for 2010 Resident Evil Afterlife. The series added 3D effects to the formula, making Afterlife the crown jewel of the series with its worldwide total of $296.2 million. At the same time, the Resident Evil budget had remained reasonable with a reported price of $65 million. Retribution represents a slight increase from Afterlife's $60 million price tag, but as long as international audience keep lining up for 3D feature, it's hard to imagine that the extra money will not be validated by another sizable worldwide gross. 1 week ago, it looked like that the 3D re-release of Finding Nemo would receive top billing at the weekend's box office. 1 year after the 3D rescue of Disney's The Lion King ran with over $30 million, it was not hard to imagine that the first Pixar feature to receive a 3D makeover since 2009. Toy Story 2 double feature would become the must-see movie of the week. Instead, Finding Nemo 3D earned an estimated $17.5 million from 2,904 locations, slightly less than Beauty and the Beast 3D took in back in January. Of course, Finding Nemo boasted a worldwide gross of over $850 million before its 3D re-release. So most Americans were already well acquainted with the 2003 classic. The fact that such a beloved property failed to break $20 million on a weekend with almost no significant family-oriented competition can be taken as yet another sign that the days when 3D could guarantee a big opening weekend were long gone. If the return of the double-digit debut was enough to save box office watchers from despair, the bravura opening of the master in just 5 locations qualified as an event. Flush from its success on the festival circuit, director Paul Thomas Anderson's drama earns an impressive $73 million over its first 3 days, or a per theater average of 146 million that qualifies as the ninth highest per theater average of all time and leaves the master well placed for the long Oscar season to come. Happy as well, all are to say goodbye to the past few weeks and their meager box office total. It is far from certain when 2012 will be back in the black. No less than 4 new titles will make their way into theater next weekend, led by the R-rated Drake and Clyde Eastwood in the baseball drama Trouble with the Curve. The Moneyball was a hit on the same weekend 1 year ago. Projection given the age to Drake through that does not guarantee that overall gross will end up ahead of 2011's level. What happened in humanity last stand at the end of Resident Evil Retribution? At the end of the Resident Evil Retribution movie, we see Wesker gather what is left of humanity to fight the undead, but at the beginning of the movie, the battle is over and we only see Alice is alive. What happened in the battle? And Resident Evil Retribution ending explained. I have just finished watching Resident Evil Afterlife and feel like I have missed a scene where Jill Valentine got his red spider strapped to her. When did this happen? Was it in this movie or did I miss something from the third movie? No, you did not miss anything. Jill Valentine disappeared after the end of Resident Evil Apocalypse and came in the pre-credit scene of Resident Evil Afterlife with the red spider strapped to her. It is not explained yet that how she got control over her through the spider thing. Even in the Resident Evil Retribution, there is no explanation for it. Originally, Jill Valentine was to appear in Resident Evil Extinction as the leader of the convoy. Her role would have been major and involved a subplot concerning her resentment toward Alice for killing Angela while under the control of Umbrella and her eventual sacrifice for the convoy when she became infected by a zombified Carlos. However, Sienna was unable to reprise her role as Jill because of scheduling conflicts with Aragon. As a result, she was written out of the movie and replaced with Ellie Lauder as Claire Redfield. It probably has nothing to do with the movies, but she had the bug on her chest in the games too, and there's a definite answer for that in the Resident Evil games. Jill and Chris were on a mission together to apprehend Wesker, and while fighting Wesker at the top floor of a mansion in Europe, Wesker was about to kill Chris, but Jill sacrificed her life to save Chris by tracking Wesker out the window. Their bodies were never found and Jill and Wesker were presumed dead. Nearing the end of the games, you find out that Wesker had survived the fall and is doing so kidnap Jill and put the red bug on her, keeping her as his slave. But the experience Chris, Jill and Claire have had the Wesker are almost hot hinted at all in the movies, and so it's probably different, especially considering she was under Umbrella's control in the movies and not Wesker's, unless Umbrella took Jill from Wesker at some point. The deep emptiness of Resident Evil Retribution. The modern history of the cinema, actually the history of modernity as such, is the recognition of art in apparent ephemeral. Such justly venerated movies come dressed as art, such as Drags the Passion of Joan of Arc, while others such as Hitchcock's Verite come dressed as disposable entertainment. The great knot in modern criticism and modern filmmaking arrive in the 50s with the recognition that they were artists at work in Hollywood making films in genre that had hitherto won little respect, such as crime stories, family, melodrama, and musicals. Some critics trash contain other treasures, and for those who love movies The release of the stealth masterwork continues to this day. It's no longer a surprise that David Cronenberg is acknowledged as an artist for such films as The Fly or Videodrome. It remained for some a little more so when Jared has his Niche Labor and Gentleman Brokers are cited and artists wonder overlooked for the same reason that comedies have trouble at Oscar time. Things that are serious in tone are too easily taken to be serious in substance, but at the very least, few critics any longer doubt that there's a sublimity to be found in movies for the most mercantile province and the most popular gender. Paul Thomas Anderson's long-awaited intimate tale of Titanic struggle the master was released last Friday and the same day as Resident Evil Retribution, the fifth installment of the video game-based franchise, written and directed by the English director Paul W. S. Anderson. And while most critics have been worthily exhausting themselves on the mighty mysteries of the former, several exceptional critics of my acquaintance, I am thinking of Jamie Christie and Armored White, also offered a cameo to the latter most succinctly in that everybody knows Resident Evil Retribution in the real film of the moment, which sufficed to proposal me to the multiplex and find out what I have been missing. So is Resident Evil Retribution the final film in the franchise? The Resident Evil Retribution is the fifth film in the video game inspired zombie series, opening in a couple of moments, and it seems only fitting that the Comic-Con crowd would be asking Dr. Paul W. Anderson and his wife and star Milla Jovovich if the end was nigh. This is definitely the beginning of the end, Anderson said this afternoon at the Resident Evil Retribution panel. This movie has a lot of revelation in it, a lot of character styles. Along with the increased scale, he continued, there's an increased jeopardy for the character involved. No one is really safe. It's a little bit weird having the end of your character talked about in front of your face. Jovovich chimed in, then I am worried to the guy you don't think I know. The actress who has now played kick-ass heroine Alice 5 times said that she and Anderson never discussed the next movie while they are still in the middle of making one, but admitted that they have talked about ideas as to how to bring Alice's story to satisfying, if not exactly happy conclusion. I really want to bring this to a close, Anderson added, but the panel moderator pointed out the real secret is when husband and wife were having those ideas of the franchise and recently or last years before Retribution was made. This was a pop-out postcard coaster. Michael Rodriguez, whose build-off character Rain Campo is coming back in clone form. I thought you were going to give up something juicy. A live fate for now at least will be revealed September 14 when the movie blasts into theater in 2D, 3D and IMAX. The under the credits sequence showed a cataleptic battle on the open seas with Milla Jovovich at its center, and runs the action in reverse, which is a gleefully playful conceit. The story concerned the attempt by the monstrous Umbrella Corporation to spark an arms race with their new virus, which escaped from the lab and killed many who returned as flesh-eating zombies to terrorize mankind. Meanwhile, Umbrella used elaborate urban simulation to demonstrate the virus power, and one woman, Alice, the corporation's prison, must escape from the corporation and lead a fight against the zombies. Joined eventually by some meaty cohorts through several simulated environments in order to save themselves along with the remnants of humanity, notably a little girl in her care. Far be it from me to deny the player found by other in a work of art, and player is what other critics get from the movie. By and large, Anderson's compositional sense is dead center and uninflected, though a few are eye-catching, notably one of Alice trapped on the floor of a huge luminous cylinder. In particular, one element of Edison's instruction efforts, kinetic invention, his taste for sudden action bursting into the fame, which during the movie's early scenes of a suburban setup, when an ordinary family finds itself thrust into a vortex of violence, occur when such a regular and ludicrous insistence that I expected the rest of the film to ramp it up into out and out comedy. This doesn't happen. There are two moments of actual humor on featuring Jovovich inducing Mitchell Rodriguez playing on anti-gun suburbanite to shoot a gun by telling her it's just like a camera point and shoot, and after the gun is fired, adding, "Congratulations, you are officially a badass." Then there's one moment of martial sublime when one of Alice's allied commandos facing danger says, "I'm starting to enjoy myself." Soon thereafter, he is gravely wounded, and as battle rakes just out of his sight, he takes out a cigar and enjoys a lost worldly player before offering himself up as a target. I think it's a busy interpretation of classic auteur cinema to imagine that Hollywood directors of the studio era, feeling hamstrung by gender and script, kept themselves happy with visual cleverness. There is the phenomenon of directors exercising a sort of critical eye on the script, staging action in such a way as to reveal peculiarities of the story, but there's not the same thing as directing solely to create marginal ornament. Edison is a consistent but silently imaginative director, and he exercised the imagination of a saber, coming up with a minor variation on theme of meme that suggests no emotional involvement in their significance. On the other hand, I think that the movie is not all dismissible. On the contrary, as deadening and depressing as its numbing battle and explosion are, the feeling or emptiness it leaves is exactly the point. I am not sure whether to ascribe this movie to Edison, to the genre, or to the video game on which it's based, but it would be wrong to relegate the movie to insignificance on the grounds of taste, or rather of the movie's tastefulness. The framed screen with which at the beginning Alice narrates and illustrates the backstory seems derived from the houseware section of discount store. The futuristic tutor has all the eye-catching shapeness of a multiplex concession area, and the various style offer the beefcake insanity of reality TV. In short, the movie is a representation of another America than the one that usually populates art house theater, one that does not usually read the Seinfeld plot that discuss this very movie, and more important, one that does really actually belong to the rough and tumble world that the movie reflects. The one is which gun ownership is common, and which participation in the military of the police is not an unfamiliar option. At the same time, Resident Evil is a relentless reflection of the tawdriness of strip malls, of the done grammars of heavy industry, of the sense of decision being made by abstract higher-ups that wait for a plant closing or a store being shuttered, of the daily threat of violence and the need to stay vigilant and look tough, of the sense of embellishment in a horrifyingly desolate landscape, and of the escape into simulation and the various as the only and fleeting feeling of heroism that the daily struggle or the daily round of boredom offers. The absurd fancy that Edison offers of plays like a documentary of the extreme state of mind and turns it into a prototype which is being represented with such efficiency propagates itself. The virus of denying fancy is the one that real umbrella corporation lets loose. I don't think that Edison is critical of it. So there's one stage moment near the end